money. Hard work leads to days that are sunny. Looking back, it was all needed. The problems, the pain, the trauma, the grieving. You are now tuned in to the prisoner to painter. Prisoner to painter. Hard work, dedication. Rainy days, inspiration. Prisoner to painter. And now, a word from your local Pope dealer.
Yeah.
All right, we're live.
Awesome. Welcome to the Prisoner to Painter podcast. I'm Nathan McDermott.
And I'm Katie McDermott.
And today joining us is Pastor Mike.
Hello.
How are you doing, Pastor?
I'm doing good. Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be on your show today. Excited to share my story, and I love just before we got started, you sharing a little bit of yours. It's really cool.
Awesome.
So thank you for letting me be here.
Man, thank you for coming on. I tried to start each one of these kind of the same, but really, when credit is due, I really wanted you to come on because I look up to you, and you and what you do at the church really helped our marriage and kept me sober. So I really want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah.
So normally we just go right into it, and then we stutter and stammer, or I stutter and stammer.
Yeah.
And then we but what's your earliest childhood memory?
I can remember being a baby, actually, like sitting on my mom's lap. I don't remember conversations or things said, but that's my earliest memory of being a child, of my mom like bouncing me on her lap. I know most people can't remember baby memories, but I do have a couple baby memories.
Cool.
But the first one where I got that sticks out as just a question is like my love for music. Ever since I was a little boy, I'd love to sing, and Elvis Presley was my hero when I'm like 4 or 5 years old, and so my dream was always to be a musician and to move to Tennessee. But that's my earliest childhood memory is music, and loving all that.
One of my favorite things is I get a gift and a gift card. For some people, I get a gift and a gift card. It's funny to me because you say you love Elvis Presley, so my gift actually makes sense. So I'm excited to give this to you, and that was I did not know that, so I'm super excited for this.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, like that caught me off guard.
All right, well, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm looking forward to that now.
Excited.
Yeah.
What did mom and dad do for work?
Yeah, so my mom, she was a stay-at-home mom. She and when my teenager, she worked for home interior designers and would do shows at houses and help decorate. So she decorated for a minute but her career, and that was pretty short. Mm-hmm. But my dad did two things. When I was a little boy, he worked for United Steel and Wire in Battle Creek, Michigan. And then when the automotives started moving out of the state, this was early 80s, mm-hmm. he lost his job, and he ended up going into construction. He was a cement truck driver. He did that for 10 or 15 years, and they have those winter months off because you don't pour a lot of concrete in the winter. At least you didn't back then. And so now he would take that time off, and he learned how to restore cars. He would do automotive work, and you know this, that's the name of your podcast. Yeah. Prisoner to Painter. So he was he kind of loved that, so he really enjoyed that. So his off months was that, and then in the early 90s, he just started doing that full time, and he would sometimes do insurance work, but it was mostly like he would renovate old cars. I know I showed you photos before we got started, and he's really good at it. So he had seasonal work. We didn't have a lot of money growing up. We probably met the poverty criteria. Actually, I know we did because we grew up with government assistance. So even though the truck driving, the cement truck, was great for the summer, but the off months it wasn't. But mom and dad, I didn't know that though. Yeah. You don't know that when you're little. But I do remember standing in the food stamp line. That used to be a thing. You used to have to stand in line for that to get our cheese, our cereal, and our milk. And
the cheese is the worst.
Oh.
I hated cheese.
It was like a big block of. Do you remember that? Yeah.
It didn't melt.
It didn't melt.
It didn't melt.
I don't know. They made my mom and dad could make some good grilled cheese out of it, but that powdered milk never tasted like milk. It was bad. Yeah. So, but mom and dad, they loved me. I have three siblings, 2 brothers who are younger than me, and then a sister who's a few years older than me from my mom's first marriage. But yeah, mom just stayed home, invested into us as kids. My mom was the first in our family to become a follower of Jesus. And then that led to my dad, and then eventually us, and that was the early 80s. So yeah, that was what I first, yeah, that's my childhood in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Because it just leads me right into my next question. Because you being a pastor, I just kind of assumed that there was some religious stuff in your background, which isn't always true. But were there any significant religious or spiritual influences growing up?
Yeah, that's a great question. And do you care if I just share briefly with your audience, in case they don't know? So I'm a pastor here in Jackson, Michigan. Planted Radiant Church back in 2014. Grew that from about 20, 30 people in our living room to a church of just over 1,000 today. Before that, I was a pastor, an associate pastor at Radiant Church in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And I thought I'd be there forever. I never had any intentions of leaving that place. It's still an incredible church. In fact, my pastor from that church will be at our church this Sunday, Pastor Lee. But in terms of what we did, like in terms of like any religious significance in my life, I would say no, because my mom didn't grow up really going to church. I think her dad occasionally took her to church. So I had no context for God. We didn't really talk about God. And so the first 10 years of my life, my mom tells me she did teach me to pray. I don't remember that, but she told me she had taught me to pray. Now I lay me down to sleep, that prayer. So she taught me that. And then when I was around 9 or 10 years old, my mom had given her heart to the Lord. And then, and I don't remember how exactly that happened, but she started praying. My dad was an atheist or an agnostic. He doesn't know which one he was. I'm not sure if that's because I asked him which one was it. He's like, I don't know. But I know that he hated God, hated Christians. And so she couldn't tell my dad that she gave her life to Jesus. So she just started praying for him. And my dad, he was coming in from the garage because he was doing body work. One afternoon, Mom would watch this guy named Pat Robertson. I don't know if you're familiar with Pat Robertson. But Pat Robertson, he had a really well-known show back in the 70s and 80s called the 700 Club. And he would do something like this. He would have people on his show and they would share their story. And that's all it really was, just a testimony thing. And so he had a guy who had a near-death experience, and he would die and went to hell. And that guy was an atheist, this guy who had this near-death experience. So he's on the Pat Robertson show. When my dad would walk into the house, if Mom was watching anything Christian, she'd change the channel because it'd make my dad mad. So, but she was out of the room, and he happened to walk in the room. He sits on the recliner. He's watching Pat Robertson interview this guy who had this near-death experience. He starts talking about this hellish experience that leads him, because he came out of it, knew that there is life after death. And so he became a follower of Jesus. Well, that story hooked my dad, and Pat Robertson said, hey, if you're hearing this story and you're not a follower, that's when my dad gave his life to the Lord. And so Pat Robertson is like, if extend your hands towards the television, I'm going to pray for you. So my dad does this and gives his life to the Lord. So I would say Pat Robertson was really the doorway that changed the spiritual trajectory of my family, because up until that moment, we were from a line of alcoholics. My dad, his grandfather, his great-grandfather, as far as they can remember, both sides, mom and dad, very dysfunctional families. So they were alcoholics. Both my grandfathers, I didn't know them. I remember my dad's dad, but I didn't know him. They both had taken their life by a self-inflicted wound in terrible ways, just because their life was in chaos. And so my dad having this encounter through the Pat Robertson really changed the spiritual trajectory of my family. And then we went to the church that was nearest to the house, because we didn't know, like, there was no like church shopping, I don't think back then. You just went to the nearest church. And so right down the road from us, a couple blocks, was a Wesleyan church. And so I can tell you the three pastors in my childhood there were probably the most significant people in my life. Pastor Gail was the last pastor, one of my teenagers that I was there. My earliest at 10 years old was Pastor Chris Hinderman, who actually ministered here in Jackson. He's the man who baptized me when I was 10 or 11. And then there was a pastor between those two that I don't quite remember his name. But yeah, so really just the pastor down the road was maybe the most spiritual, significant person in my life growing up. But I really didn't have any. Yeah. And I wouldn't say, I should probably be clear about this. We weren't like very religious.
Okay.
You know, like, and we weren't very consistent with church. So it's just ironic that I just happened to be a pastor and be in ministry. But I did feel the call of the Lord on my life, even as a little boy.
Yeah, you said there wasn't much church shopping. Even now, at least for us, we, I was born and raised Catholic. She was born and raised.
My mom church shopped a lot, so
Yeah.
mainly we were Pentecostal, but we did like a lot of pre-Methodist. and
Awesome.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I say that because when we found Radiant, there wasn't no that was it, like that. We haven't been nowhere else.
And you've been there like a year now.
Coming up on
Coming up on 2.
2. Yep.
Two?
The
Coming up on
back
2.
to the
yeah.
movies was when we came.
So and I got sober 18 months ago, or 19. So that the movie must have been about 16 months ago. So yeah, about a year and a half. But yeah,
Okay.
we walked in and that was it.
From at the movies.
Yep. And I remember it was that movie playing with
Oh.
Chris Pratt and
Some project.
Yeah, the Adam Project.
Adam Project. Yeah.
So it wasn't even the first half of the movies. It was I think it was like the second.
Yeah. That was the good one. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was the good one. Yeah.
Well, at least yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
And did that movie, like, did it connect with you? Like,
Honestly, I've never walked into church and had my hand shaken. I've never had a door opened. It wasn't even the movie that made us say. It had nothing to do with the movie, man. It was you. It was because you came out and spoke a little bit, and that's all you said for the whole movie. And then just I've never had that. I mean, maybe she had.
That's the last.
so it was just like community.
Yeah, that's literally all. That's all it was.
But the movie got you in the door.
Yeah, and then
Fascinating.
and then the first thing you talked about, I don't recall, but it made us stay. So, yep.
Wow.
And then it's funny later finding out her uncle goes there for realtor, and then so
Yeah. I just met Brent.
no kidding.
Yeah. He, I've talked to him in the lobby kind of
Yeah.
thing, but just really had my first conversation with him a couple months ago.
He's a really good guy.
Love him. Yeah.
He is a really good guy. Is there any smells that remind you of childhood?
Yeah, I would say campfire. Yeah, we didn't have a lot of them, but probably that apples. Fall was probably the time of the year where I felt like my smelling senses kicked in. Yeah, we had an apple tree in our front yard every August. They flower now, but they come in at late August, early, and I'd climb that tree, probably apples. Yeah, that fall campfirey smell. Yeah,
That's the best season.
it is. Yeah, my wife's always said that, and I've just come around to that. I've always like, no, it's the spring because it's telling you we got a good few months of warm weather. But now I'm like, no, fall's good, nice and crisp.
Yeah. I guess I should have asked. Well, first I want to say, if there's anything you ever want to say or stop me or anything, this is your episode. This is your show. It's not ours. We are just here as a conductor.
Oh, thank you.
So,
Yeah.
it is. God, I just lost where I was going with that. No, I know that. No, but there was something off. There was something piggybacking off of that. I blipped on. Well, whatever. Cherished. Is there any cherished family traditions that you have? Oh no. Sorry.
Yeah, swing back.
Yeah,
let's do it.
perfect. So you said you planted in Jackson. Where are you from?
Oh, yeah. So I was born in Battle Creek, Michigan, and I lived my whole life there until I moved to Jackson.
Okay.
So I'm 51. So I moved to Jackson when I was 39 years old. I went into ministry at 27 years old. Before that, I was a machinist at Eaton Corporation in Marshall, Michigan. But I lived my whole life up until my late 30s in Battle Creek, Michigan. I was born and raised there.
Okay.
and people. Have you ever been to Battle Creek? Yeah. So I didn't know this, but people had said, "Hey," someone said to me one time, "Battle Creek smells like breakfast." That's my childhood smell, dude. Where, yeah, you go through Battle Creek, Michigan, and when they got those ovens rolling, whether it's Post or Kellogg's or Rawson's, you can smell. Battle Creek smells like breakfast. It's that, man. That's my smell. That's my childhood smell. And now when I go back, and I can tell when they got those ovens on. But I grew up there. I never felt at home there. I'd always knew I was going to move. In my early years, I thought, when I was a little boy, my heart was, I'm going to go in the music industry. I had a dream for music, a passion for music. I have a connection with an artist from the 1960s named Del Shannon. He wrote a song called Runaway. It was a #1 hit for him. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He's responsible for bringing the Beatles to America in the early 60s. Beatles used to open for Del.
Wow.
He was slated to replace Roy Orbison in the Traveling Wilburys. This is the early 90s, probably a little bit before your time. However, my grandfather was a guitar player for him. Do you know what Tom Petty is?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, Tom Petty. So he's got this song called Running Down a Dream. It's one of his big songs, Running Down a Dream. And there he says, me and Del were singing Little Runaway. Quick little lyric in that Running Down a Dream song. But was my music hero because my grandfather played guitar for Del. So Del became my hero and my idol. He was from Battle Creek, Michigan. And then he made it to the big time, ends up living in LA, and his songs are on American Graffiti, that classic movie. Any artist, like they'll know who Del Shannon is. He's not real well known. Most people call him a one-hit wonder, but he wasn't. He had many hits from the 60s. So my dream was to go into music, and I knew Battle Creek's not going to be my home.
Yeah.
I'm going to move. I'm going to do what Elvis did, because it started with Elvis as I was little. Then when I found out my grandfather played with Del, I'm going to move out. When I was 15, I had recorded and I went in the studio. I recorded his song called Runaway with my band. And I was backstage with Del. I met Del when I was 12 at the Kellogg Arena in Battle Creek. Backstage, it was when I first met him, and I developed a friendship with him.
Wow.
So both, this is kind of a sideline, a rabbit trail story, but my both my grandfathers took their lives, so I didn't know them. So I projected onto him a grandfather type role. Well, when I was 15, he took his life. And so all my dreams for music just got crushed. And that's really what sent me spiraling in my teenage years. And I just lived really wild, not knowing how to handle this hero in my life, who was a friend to me, not just a hero that you don't know. This is a man who would talk to me every month. This is a man I would go see and perform. But when I was 15 years old, I recorded this song, his song Runaway, and I played it for him backstage. He was playing a concert here in Michigan. He said, "Mike, I want you to come out and sing this song with me." And I'm like, I only know one other person who sang on stage with Del Shannon, this Tom Petty. So I'm going to go on stage with Del. So here I am. This is 1989. So I'm on stage in front of thousands of people with his closing song. He would close with a song. And he does Runaway, and then I seen him again a few months later in Allegan, Michigan. Same thing. He invites me on stage, so I performed with him twice.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
Yeah. But anyways, I'm really rabbit trailing here to answer your question. But you did say I could do that.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing. So I knew, like, I'm going to go in the music. So I'm not going to be in Battle Creek. Battle Creek never felt like home. Well, that dream of music is kind of what started really crushing our marriage. So I get married at 19 years old in Battle Creek. And ironically, it's a little another side story. The first time my wife ever heard me, she heard me on the radio. I was doing a live event out of Wing Stadium. It was a live 50s and 60s show. I had a 50s and 60s band at the time. And she was we were teenagers at the time. So she heard me on the radio. That's her first memory of me, was singing on the radio. But so I knew, like, I'm going to move to Nashville. I'm going to do my thing. Eventually it kind of turned into country music. That's kind of where I landed in my early 20s. But we got married at 19. We had a honeymoon baby, Michael, our oldest son. He's 31 now. he came into the picture, and so I didn't know how to be dad. I was kind of recovering from Dell's death. I got married at 19, I had my son, and all of this just started kind of make just a perfect combination, not knowing how to be a husband, not knowing how to be a dad, all of that. Anyways, long story short, is God heals my marriage. I get in the church, end up in ministry. Never planned it, never like had a dream for ministry, just stumbled my way into it. And you know, it just kind of arriving just because I'm just open to whatever the Lord wants to do in my life. But when the Lord called me out, so I was a music minister for 17 years before I moved to Jackson. And so when the Lord called me out to plant this church, and I moved to Jackson, Jackson felt like home. That crazy? Like, this is my home. Took me 39 years to get here, but man, I made it.
I grew up in Fowlerville, and
where's Fowlerville at?
Gregory, Brighton area.
Oh yeah,
Yep. So, funny. I can't believe out of all places, this is my home too. Or it feels like home too.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Jackson feels like it has like a little bit of big town, but still feels like a small town. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can walk from one side of the city to the other in a day. So that makes it feel small town. What were your biggest fears? Try to throw in some bad.
That's great. In what regards? Like in childhood or just like in life?
Well, we kind of worked our way up to when you were about 15. Yeah. So let's say 15 until when you were married. What were your biggest fears?
In my teenage years and my adolescence and even in my early 20s, I would probably say if you'd asked me then, I would have said I don't have any fears because I didn't know it was fear at the time. But I think my greatest fear then is rejection. You don't know to say that then.
Yeah.
And so you put on the front, you put on the mask, you try to appear cool, you try to not mess up so you don't get made fun of because you don't want to feel that rejection. My greatest fear was probably rejection, and then there's all the sub fears that come with that. Like, am I good enough to make it in music? Will they reject me? Am I a good enough husband? Will she reject me? Like, just probably rejection is my greatest fear. And as a pastor, it's one of the things I've learned is most people wrestle with that. Am I good enough? Like, am I really? We know Jesus died for us. We know the story. But we really don't always believe it's true for us. We think it's true for everyone else.
Yeah.
But not for me because this is what I've done, or this is, and that it doesn't matter from the worst kind of sin or behavior you can think of, all the way to the person you think has it together. I think most people feel that fear. Will you love me if I share the worst about myself? And so at 35, so I would say, and then that's, and I don't know how I worked through that, but learning to hear the voice of God really helped me become emotionally aware. Oh, I got fear. I would have told you I didn't. I'd say I'm a man of faith and I'm believing some things. And but when I get honest and I let the Holy Spirit speak to me, I do feel like, oh, there's that again. And no one ever gets past it. That's why we need God to keep recentering us, like, because we're human. But probably rejection. Will I be misunderstood?
Yeah.
Will I be loved if you knew this about me? And it's the worst thing I could say about myself. And I found in Christ there's a lot of freedom once you figure out that love. Yeah.
Katie loves asking this question.
Yeah.
And you kind of said it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you met your younger self, it's kind of a two-parter question. How do you think that would go? And then I always ask people, do you think you would like fight your younger self?
Would you get along with your younger self?
Like, or would it be like headbutting? Not necessarily physical fighting, but like
would my younger self listen to me?
Yeah.
Would you like each other? Would you get along? Would you argue?
So I have an old soul. And as a young man, most of my friends were older than me. I loved listening to old people. Like when my parents had, and they weren't old, they were, but when you're a kid, you think they're old.
They're old.
When my parents would have people over, I would just sit in the dining room and sometimes literally hide under the table just so I could hear the conversations of older people. So I always resonate with older people. So I think my younger self would like be intrigued if we had the Adam Project, like was a real thing, and I could go back to myself. I think I would probably ask myself some questions. I probably would challenge myself. Like the younger me would say, "Why didn't you go into music?" I would probably ask some questions. I was a curious kid. I would ask questions. I don't think I'd fight with myself. I think I'd be like, "This is amazing. Tell me what's happened." And you're gonna have 3 kids. I would be blown away by that. But my 50-year-old self, what I would tell my younger self. That's a great question, Katie. I would probably tell him it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. I would tell him you're going to learn to take some punches. And in the counseling world, they call that integration, where you can circle back. You circle back like to a childhood memory, and you tell your younger self this, like, what is that little boy? Because there's the little boy is still in me and you, and the little girl is still in you. And the Lord has taken me back a few times to some times when I was really, a lot of them was my adolescent years too. Not just my adolescent years, where I had in my imagination, holy imagination, would sit with myself and process with myself. Here's what you're experiencing, and you're going to be okay. My heart is to keep that childhood boy alive in me, and I want to do this, and I think everybody wants to do this. We want to shut them up, because there's some point in our life where like we figure out, like, you've embarrassed me, the little boy or the little girl. You've done something, someone said something, you embarrassed me, never say that again. And then we stuff that child in us. And Jesus told us, when they said, he tells us, he puts a child on his lap and said, this is what you must become like to receive the kingdom. So I try to get back to that little boy sometimes, not to be childish, but to be light. Yeah. So the playful part you need. Yeah.
It's the wonder.
Yeah.
It is
the curiosity, the sense of adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Peter Pan. Like, yeah. Just don't grow up. Yeah.
We had a real windy day, a couple weeks ago. I went out front and flew a kite in our front yard. Just
amazing.
Because I was like, that would be fun. Like,
it was beautiful.
We don't have enough play in our life anymore.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
It's all about healing yourself.
Yeah.
They're your younger self, so that your older self can appreciate more.
Yeah. Sometimes we want to be like that kid who just screams, just out of pure joy. And we don't do that. We've shut the child up in us, and I'm not great at it, but I work towards, like, I'm more of a serious person. I'm a thinker, and so I know, like, I need to be more joyful. But there's a whole theology about God being a God of play. God at Play. I read a book a couple years ago called God at Play, just to help unlock that in me and in other people.
That's one thing I admire about you, is all these books you read and you take it into your, I'll say, sermon. And I like that. And then another thing that you've been doing is telling everybody to slow down.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a very brash way of saying it, but it's helped us. Like, seriously, it has made us more childlike, slowing down instead of rushing to the next thing. It has been, life's been better.
Nobody flies a kite.
Yeah. I mean,
as an adult.
Like it's
and you only do that if you have little kids. Mm-hmm. And so it's great we have them, because they remind us. That's what Jesus was doing. Like, hey, look at what they're doing, and they slow it down. You know what? Kids are easy. They're easy to forgive. They have big imagination. They can dream the impossible. Mm-hmm. And like all the leadership books, they don't say it this way, but that's what they're doing. They're like, you need to dream big like a child.
Mhm.
A child will have big, big dreams, and we don't slow down anymore. We, my middle son Curtis, I one time watched him, observed him ask a man in 60s or late 60s, early 70s in our church, asked him, what was it like before cell phones? I remember what it was like before cell phones. I remember having a pager. I remember that it was a big deal if the phone rang. And I remember there was a time you didn't know who was calling.
Yeah. There was no caller ID.
Caller ID didn't come out till the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. You just picked it up and said hello. You had no idea who was calling. And there was something like a gift about it. And people would just show up at your house.
Oh, they don't do that anymore.
That doesn't happen anymore. You're like, why are they here?
Yeah.
Right? We don't slow down. And what, I know I'm preaching now, but we are not meant to, I don't think, to go. I recently just started reading a book. I have not finished it, but they're just starting to work through research. We have no idea. We don't even have a clue. Never in history have we ever had this much advanced technology. So we have no idea what this means for the human soul. We've never been able to even grasp. We are experiencing history at an accelerated rate. So if you think about up until the 1990s, what you would learn about history kind of was a really slight incline. Because you would hear things as now it's like instant. If it happened on the other side of the world, we're going to know about it within seconds.
Yeah.
At least a minute.
Yeah.
If there's an earthquake, within 5 minutes, we are being told.
Yep.
But they used to be that might take days. So now instead of this slow incline, it's this. And we have no idea. And it's not just the important stuff. It's every little thing. And so and we have no idea what that's doing to our souls. I do think, I don't know, I can't prove this, but I do think it's the reason why young generations have so much anxiety, because they have so much information coming at them. They are always available. They are always on, and they are looking, and we all do this to some extent, but the younger generation, they don't have the past to look to, like I got to get back to that to slow down because our souls were healthier. We're not meant to move at this pace. Not at all.
I'm bad with anxiety. I was God's helping me. God took my obsession to drink, and I'm trusting in God in that. But where was I just going with that? So okay, so about the anxiety thing and all that. Speaking for myself, from being an addict and an ex-addict, ex-alcoholic, the scrolling and even if it's little Jesus clips, I feel it do something inside of my body, like dopamine or whatever.
Yeah.
That's got to be causing something wrong. Like instant dopamine hits, it's just like drugs.
Well, it's designed to do that.
Yeah.
It is doing that. Research has shown that there's dopamine hits, which is why you can be on it for an hour. Mm-hmm. Do you remember when TikTok came out?
Yeah.
And that used to be this guy would pop up and say, "Hey, you've been scrolling for way too long."
Yeah.
They got rid of that guy.
Yeah.
But when TikTok came out, I had the same thing. You do feel that, like, I can't believe I still do it from time to time, where I'll get pulled into TikTok. It really wasn't much into Facebook, but TikTok, something about those quick videos, you're not getting enough.
Yeah.
Like an addiction.
Yeah.
I need another hit. I need another video. And we're trained to keep that algorithm is intentional.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that like we just stumbled into this and this is what we're all doing. Like, no, it's designed to keep us looking, and it's harming us, I think. Yeah.
You said looking backwards. We were in that generation of Nextel beepers.
Oh, I remember. I had a Nextel.
So I know.
The church, I missed it.
So I've seen no technology, but we were part of I was old enough to see the shoot of technology.
We have had floppy disks, VHS,
There you go.
CDs.
Yeah.
I remember we had an 8-track for a minute.
Oh yeah.
so,
Okay.
But I also lived rural, so I always said it's 10 years behind. So in 2000, I was living in the 90s. I had dial-up, I had AOL.
Oh yeah.
So it's weird that the generations it's literally skyrocketing to where it's changing everything. Like we've seen so much change
Yeah.
that I was just talking about this the other day. People my age, it's like I'm going to be 3 decades old, right? I feel like I've lived 5 because the technological advances that I've.
Well, that's what I mean by the accelerated rate. The curve has went from like this to, and you are getting so much. You have access to everything. I mean, there are good things about technology. I don't want to sound like it's all doom.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing this
Yeah.
right now live. That was no one 15 years ago could ever think that you could put a studio in your house and just jump on and have an audience.
Yeah.
So there are some good things. I don't know if this is true. I have not done any research to back up what I'm about to say. But I was talking with a pastor I respect, and he was saying, I think there's 7,000 languages who don't have access to the Bible. There's no Bible written. But because of AI, they think within 10 years, they will have translated a Bible in every language because of AI. Right now, if you want to translate a language, you have to live your life in a village of an unknown people group. So you would, like, if you go to a jungle, let's say somewhere, you insert your life for 20 years to get them the Bible. So there are some good things, like to get access to the Word of God to every language in 10 years is unreal. That's they're good things. But yeah, we have to have good boundaries, good parameters around these things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just before we move on to the next part, I'll say, taking a look back from childhood to school, in just a broad question, how would you say it was?
From childhood to school?
Yeah, like schooling, I'd say probably just a general synopsis.
Just before I ask you about getting married and getting to that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'm an introvert. That shocks people.
It does.
because I'm a public speaker, but you learn, you learn through that. Introvert doesn't mean I'm scared or fearful, but in elementary school, I was extremely shy because, God made me an introvert. So and when I went to kindergarten, my first year, I got held back, not because I couldn't keep up with the other students, even though I did. I had slow processing, but more so because I was shy. I wouldn't participate. I couldn't handle like all the noise of the room. And so when they took me out of school, the day it happened, because they didn't even let me finish the year, they called my mom, said, you need to come to school. We want you to observe your son. So I was in the gymnasium and the kids are like running all around it. And I'm just standing in fear, petrified, just standing still. And they said, hey, your son's not ready. So I got held back a year. Within 1 year, though, something came out of me because a year later, I had gotten a guitar, and so that was my show and tell thing, and I was telling. So something brought me out of that. I wasn't a good student. I have slow processing. I have some ADHD, self-diagnosed, and so what you probably picked up on. Oh, he's rambling and his hands are moving. He's moving around a lot, but. So I didn't do well. And when I got a car at 16, then I just started skipping a lot of school, barely graduated, barely got out of high school. I didn't get good grades. I jokingly say, when people say my kid has never gotten a B, I'm like, well, neither have I. So what are you bragging about? That's easy to do. But so I went to night school 4 nights a week my last senior year. I had some college. I didn't get a degree, but I had some regional college through Kellogg Community College to go into machining. I was a CNC operator for 7 years. I was a machinist for E Corporation before I went in the ministry. Ministry was really just what Pastor Lee had poured into me as he mentored me. And then when I planted, before I moved to Jackson, I went back to school, Assemblies of God, actually, and did their 2 year. I have a level 1 and a level 2 in ministerial studies. I did good in that. Yeah. But so yeah. So I do have some college credits, but I don't officially have a degree. That's one of the things I worried about planting a church with. But I think once in 11 years, someone's asked me about my degree, like, where'd you get your education? Really experience. The stuff was great from the Bible school, but that's not what taught me how to minister.
Have you ever taken the Myers-Briggs personality test?
I believe I have. I've taken multiple ones. That's not the disc.
It's the one with the letters. So like me personally, I'm actually an introvert extrovert. I'm literally like right on the cusp. So I'm an EINFT.
I have taken those. I don't remember where those land in me. Did they assign animals to that one?
They assigned a bunch of stuff to that one. So
Okay.
like movie characters, like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
type of person.
I was a
you
golden
are.
retriever.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd probably be just like my dog, a German Shepherd, high strung and everybody.
I have taken like I don't remember. I have taken that, and I've taken a couple throughout the years. But my favorite out of all personality profiling is the Enneagram. I don't really talk a lot about that because it's the least kind of respected in the. Well, it's picking up a lot of momentum now, but I actually think it's the best because it has 9 ways of being what we would call normal. And I'd like that they don't say personalities, like, and it's more of a spectrum, and you can blend and move into the others because there's moments I am extrovert. That, like, the thing about personality profiling is it can pigeonhole you.
It compartmentalizes
Yeah.
everything about you.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense because you're an extrovert. Yeah. But I have found out of all of it, the most fascinating to me has been the Enneagram.
I don't want to ask 100 questions all
No.
at once, but you said you got married at 19. Was it a big wedding, and what are notable memories of it?
Yeah. No, we eloped.
Get it?
We got married during COVID, so we get it.
Oh yeah. COVID probably had a lot of eloping. We were 19. So let me share why that happened. So I lived very immoral from the time Dell died at 15 till 18. And I was getting over a bad night of partying. I made a lot of bad choices. And I in my bathroom at 18. Well, let me just back up. At 10, I had an incredible encounter with the Lord. So I gave my life to the Lord at the Kellogg Arena at a Clyde Duplin crusade. And that's how I came to know the Lord. And I was faithful to the Lord up until Dell died. And just because I didn't know how to process that, I didn't go to counseling over any of that. Just in those days, you just like get over it. So I lived in moral. And then when I became a musician, I had a band that opened up a lot of immorality because of the popularity being a musician gave me. So lots of bad choices. And I was overcoming a bad night of partying. And I heard the Holy Spirit. I didn't know it was the Holy Spirit then. I thought it was my head. But I heard this question came into my head: is this how you're going to live your life? But it was said in the third person. And I was like, no, I don't think I want to live this way. And so I prayed and I gave my life to the Lord at 18. I break up with this girl that I thought I was going to marry. I had been dating her for 2 years, who I had been cheating on because of my lifestyle. And me and her we lived immoral and sexually impure, at least to Christian standards, I mean. And so I prayed that prayer. Well, I give my life to Jesus in the bathroom, just all over again. I meet my wife at work at Pizza Hut. We're both seniors in high school. I meet her. She's 18. She doesn't go to church. She told me, it's great. You love God. Don't cram it down my throat. I respected that. And then after we graduated, I proposed to her. She gave her heart to the Lord the same day I proposed to her. And we decided to live here. And we were going to we planned out a wedding. We had a long time to turn plan out. And I just asked this question: why are we waiting to get married? I don't understand this. And she's like, I don't care. We can get married now. I'm like, so we drove down to Elizabethtown, Kentucky and just eloped. I think we told my parents, told her parents later. I do not recommend that, but so I don't know the pastor who married me. We literally we went through a Yellow Pages phone book and like just kept calling churches till we found somebody who would marry us because we were living sexually pure. And so we just like, let's just get married and let's do this. And then after we got married, a couple months later, we had a celebration with our families. So it was small, maybe 50, 60 family members got together. And that's how we got married.
Awesome.
Yeah.
When did kids become a part of your story?
Yeah. So we got married in November and we had a kid by August. So we had a literal honeymoon baby. Yeah. So we were married at 9. So Jenny, when she had Michael, she was 19. We got married at 19. Both of us were 19 years old. And so he came in to the picture. That's really kind of my obsession with my unhealthy obsession with music and drive to get down to Tennessee, being a 20-year-old dad who doesn't know how to be a husband, eloped for the wrong reasons. I mean, I think our hearts were pure in it, but that wasn't a good reason. You know, we should have still had family around. We should have done it right. But all those things, and then we got into a lot of debt. But all those are a combination of just really wrecking our marriage, and it did. So within 3 years of our marriage, we were going to get divorced. This was mid 90s. I don't remember anymore. It's a long time ago. And then Michael was just 3 or 4 years old. I had determined I was going to leave Jenny. And then I was staying at my friend's house because I'd moved out. I had determined I was going to get a divorce, but I never wanted a divorce. I didn't want to do that. And I prayed in my friend's bedroom. I said, Lord, I don't know how I got here. And I heard, again, in my head, which I thought was my thoughts, but it was the Holy Spirit. I heard, go back to church and get Christian counseling. I didn't know there was a such thing as Christian counseling, but I heard that in my head. I called my mom. I said, are there Christian counselors? I knew I wanted somebody who's going to help my marriage and tell me to fight for it. And not like, okay, well, you guys have blown it and you have irreconcilable differences, which is, I think, the biggest lie in divorce papers. You can almost get through anything if you fight for it. And research actually shows this. If you'll fight for your marriage in the long run, because there are people who've been married 60 years. Yeah. And they got some stories to tell you. They've been through some hard things. This shows you're better off for it. Yeah. So then we went back to church. That healed our marriage. That's what healed us. I don't know the message series. It was just being in the presence of a church. God used the gathering to heal our marriages. I think that's why I pastor. One of the many reasons is, church saved me. Saved my marriage. God used the church. I know it's Jesus, but he used people in that congregation to help us.
We knew when we were suffering together, we knew the answer. We just had to go, and it worked. It was nobody or no thing. It was just going to church. Yeah. That was it. There was other clearly working on it, but I'm saying just going and showing up was the most part of it. Sorry, but before we continue, I couldn't understand what I wrote, and now I understand it.
Yeah.
What were you wearing when you got married?
Jeans and a sweater.
Okay.
And this was 90s sweaters. Remember when 90s had like the purple and the gray and sleeves that were different colors? I think I had 2 different color sleeves.
Like the windbreakers?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I think, I'm trying to remember what Jenny had. She might have had a windbreaker. I think she did. Yeah. So I wasn't dressed real good. I literally what I threw on that day, that's how we got married.
So it's funny. It's just so I can share it. What I wrote was, what color of suit and dress did you wear? But then your story made me change the way I worded it. So that's funny. Sorry, that's good. So when did you know you wanted to be a pastor?
Well, I never really felt a desire for ministry. I often say this way, two things. I've stumbled my way through it, and each step is an arrival. So I don't have it figured out. I feel like I could do this forever. I don't know if the Lord will always do that, but this is where he has me right now. And I'm investing my life into a people, into a community, into this church. But the quick answer is I went into ministry full time at 27. I never really thought, I never had a dream to be a pastor. But what happened was Radiant Church of Kalamazoo, we were there from the beginning. In 1996 is when we walked in their doors on Labor Day weekend, 96.
You're older than me. Really? They are. They're older by 1 year. I'm born in
97?
Yeah.
Our Curtis was born in 97. So you're 28 this year.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So 28 years ago, I walked into Radiant Kalamazoo and God used the church in my marriage. Well, I had given up music because I knew that was one of the issues. Like, this is the thing that's killing my dream is killing my marriage. So I laid that down before the Lord. So when I walked into Radiant Church Kalamazoo, it was because the Lord said, go back to church, get Christian counseling. We did those two things. I laid down playing music. I said, I'm never going to pick this up again. But when I got there, it was a church plant. They needed a musician. I didn't want them to know that I played music, but they needed help. So when I asked, hey, I remember you asking me this when you showed up, like, what can I do? Do you remember that? That's what I did the second week. I go in, I just knew I got to help. This is a church, so I'm not a bench warmer. I want to help. So I asked Lee, hey, what can I do? And he's like, well, what are you good at? I'm like, no, I just want to help you. Tell me what you need. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, what are you good at? And I'm like, well, I noticed you I'm a bass player. I can play bass for you. So I started playing bass. Within a few months, I was leading worship, which I didn't know what that meant. I had never heard of a worship leader or worship band, none of that. I had no context for that. So I became a worship leader, and I did that for the first 6 years part-time, or on Sundays as a volunteer. And then as the church grew from the few people to several hundred, when we were around 400 or 500, Pastor Lee came to me and said, would you consider quitting Eaton and come working for the church? So really, it wasn't that I knew, it was an invitation. And I prayed about it, and I said yes. And I took a pay cut to do it, a big pay cut, because the church, just for what they could afford. Mm-hmm. And then I never thought I would be a lead pastor. Never thought I'd plant a church. I thought I'd just always help lead, serve the vision there. And because God, that church is 3,000-4,000 people now. And when I left, it was 1,700. So I had no reason to leave. God's just blessing everything in my life then. And then the Lord told me, your assignment here in Kalamazoo is done. I want you to plant a life-giving church in Jackson, Michigan.
Awesome.
Yeah, so but I've stumbled into all of it.
That's still impressive to me, Mike. That's impressive. Regardless.
It seems like you stumble gracefully, though. So.
Yeah.
Well, gracefully would be a good word because it's the Lord. Yeah, it just puts the grace on you. You don't have to be the best at something. You just need the calling. And I'll just say this to you guys because I can feel it. You're going somewhere. You're taking this. There's a verse in scripture that says, do not despise the day of small beginnings. For in the end that people will rejoice when they see the plumb line of Zerubbabel drop. Well, this podcast is new. So this is what you might call a small beginning. But you're reading the right books. You're getting the right mentors around you. You're going to stumble your way into something beautiful. I just want to prophetically say that to you.
Thank you.
I'm just proud of you guys. And like, wow, I'm just sitting in their studio and we're doing this thing. That's amazing. Yeah.
There's a problem with forgiveness. One thing you just said, your love of music was destroying your marriage. And I know God puts people in front of me because I need it. Smack in my face.
Yeah.
I was screwing my marriage up because of my love of money.
Oh yeah.
It was sinful how much I love money.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'm glad you're here. before I stumble more and say,
Yeah.
thank you for.
Oh, you're welcome.
sharing
Thank
that.
you for sharing
It's really
that.
awesome.
It's the 3 P's: power, pleasure. What is it? Power, pleasure. I'm drawing a blank on the third.
Perception.
No, it's power, pleasure. I want to say maybe platform, but that's not it. But anyways, yeah, money equals power.
Yeah. Well, and I've always equated money to freedom, and that was false. Money
Yeah.
does not equal freedom.
No,
And it's just all coming. It's rolling in.
can actually lead a lot of bondage.
Yeah, that's what.
But it can be very empowering when you're really free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and because I never had money, a lot of money, so then buy a house, and it was of the devil.
Yeah.
It wasn't of God.
I get that. Yeah.
And especially the way I made my way up through the ranks, and my mentor, and I was sitting at the table with 7 millionaires, and I don't care to be them. I would rather sit at a table with 7 you. So it's flooded in that I was seeking the wrong mentorship.
What were some challenges that you experienced when you decided to take the leap and move into church?
Well, the biggest piece is how I will provide for my family, because it was a significant pay cut, down to nothing. And I had 3 boys in high school. That was the biggest part. The other, probably, can I do it? That was, do I have what it takes to lead a church? I'd rather be on staff and serve a vision than to lead it. And the other one was the provision, and the provision of making it happen was another big one. And then the third one would be like the transition for my children, because they were all in high school when we moved here. That's a big change. Everything they knew was in Battle Creek and Kalamazoo. All their friends were there, and that's a terrible time. But God used it. We heard the Lord. He blessed it. All 3 of my boys are in ministry now. But the fear of, can I do it? How will the Lord make it happen financially, or not even just all the resources, the finances, the people? Will anyone even come? And do I have what it takes? Because I had only spoken less than, maybe 5 times tops when I moved here 11 years ago. I never spoken publicly except for a handful of times. So I had to learn how to do that.
Right.
How has your understanding of the Bible and God evolved over time for you?
Oh, well, I have always loved God's word since I started reading it in my teenage years. How it's evolved. I read God's word almost every day, except for maybe Mondays, because I try to. Some Mondays I do, but my brain feels like mush after preaching all day Sunday. But how it's evolved is, I guess, going from it being content to being God's voice to us.
Yeah.
Because you can read the Bible intellectually, and you can read the Bible as a student. And people do. There are people who read the Bible who don't even believe in God. Archaeologists do it for research in the Middle East to find tells. So there are people who read God's word just as a student. But to go from content to it becoming a living voice to you would probably be the biggest way it's evolved for me. But you kind of got to start with the content. You have to read it. Just to read it. And people will sometimes say, I don't understand the Bible, or it's boring to me. And I say, no, but just keep doing it, because one day a voice will emerge from it. So do it every day. And another way to say it, it's a little bit like Karate Kid, the wax on, wax off. You don't know what the Lord's doing, but that's what's happening. Every time you open up God's word, and then one day, some karate moves. You're like, how do I know this? And it's, sometimes people will ask me questions, and because I read the Bible so much, verses will come out of me that I don't ever, how did I know that? It's the Holy Spirit, because that's what will happen. He'll recall it to your memory in times that you need it. Or while you're reading it, it will convict you. Eugene Peterson says the Bible is the only book that reads you when you read it. And that's probably been the biggest evolving part, is from content to a living voice.
Do you have a favorite verse?
I got a couple. One verse that I've stumbled upon, I think it's Revelations 9 or Psalms 19:17. Don't quote me, but sometimes I have seasonal verses. But there's this verse in Psalms that says that God takes pleasure in us. I don't think we think about that enough. Right now, I'm wanting to be this child of God in the context of what He meant it to be, which is why I taught this Sunday on, hey, slow down so you can have intimacy with the Father. That's what all this is about. And He takes pleasure in you. That's a good verse for me right now. But a couple that come up to my top of my head as you ask that question, one that I've always loved is Proverbs talks about, you see a man who's skilled in what he does. He will not stand before obscure men. He will stand before kings, which means that's why sweating the little things matters. That kind of person will stand before kings. Another is Proverbs 16:9. Do you see a man's heart will plan his way, but the Lord determines his steps. So these books you're reading, it's your heart dreaming and planning. You're like dreaming, like you got dreams. And the Lord honors that, but almost always our dreams end up better in the hands of God. So those are ones. One that I think, that's probably the best. Yeah, but I think of many verses, as you say. I don't know if I have a favorite, but right now I just want to tell people God takes pleasure in you. I want that for myself, and I want other people to know that. That's a verse we don't like. What does that mean? I don't know. Think about that. Ask Him.
Yeah.
How do you take pleasure in me? Man, that'll blow your mind. Yeah.
I've really loved having you on, Mike.
Thank you.
I really have.
It's been a great.
I've loved it. And so you probably about another 20 minutes.
I got time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. I just wanted to. Everybody's important, but I know that you have a schedule to keep, so I just wanted to make sure that we stayed on your schedule.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Oh geez. How do you prepare your sermons and teachings?
Well, in terms of series, I think 3 ways. So let me first talk about how I think about it. Like what I should be sharing is 3 ways. One is felt needs, right? So a felt need is like my marriage is hurting, or I'm doing poorly in my finances. How people feel financial stress, people feel relational stress. So sometimes I preach felt needs, and I'll do a series on felt needs. So last January 24, I did a happiness series because our culture is not happy. We just don't have joy. And so I did a series on happiness. That's a felt need. And then I'll do evangelistical series. And those, not a lot, but Christmas and Easter are always that. I'm going to tell you, bring your friends, because we're going to give an invitation for them to receive Jesus. At the movies is one of those. It's not a felt need, although felt needs will be touched, but it's a way to get people who might not normally go to church in the door. Easter people will go to church because they're still open to it. And the research is showing that this is the first time in history that Christianity, not in history, I'm saying that wrong. The first time in decades, like 40, 50 years, Christianity has been on a decline since the 60s, maybe even the 50s. There was a great revival in the tent revivals in the 50s. So if I'm guessing, it would probably be the 60s, but it's been decades, at least 50 years. It's on an increase now. So we need some evangelism, which means to tell or to proclaim. So evangelistic. And then the other one is just biblical teaching. So it's not a felt need, because sometimes you don't need your need, your felt need. What you need is truth.
Mhm.
So, so I want to go through the Bible. So this, every summer, I always do a teaching series from June to July or to August. It's a teaching series. So this summer, we're going to be going through the book of Acts. 2 years ago, we did Sermon on the Mount. It took us 2 years to do it, but we took 2 summers to go through Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And the reason for that is so that if you're only on felt needs, you can miss a lot of the scripture. Okay, so that's the 3 ways I think. How I spend most, and then I'm usually about 3 months ahead into my thinking, where we're going. So I know that we're going to go through the book of Acts in a couple of weeks. We're going to start a series called the book of Acts. But Wednesdays is my message day. I spend most of that morning in prayer. And then somewhere around 11 to lunchtime, I'll break for lunch. After being, every one of my mornings is, I have heavy prayer times, more than probably most pastors. I just need the Lord more than I need content. And out of my time with the Lord, I'll stumble into content. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I will journal throughout days or weeks, or maybe in my time with the Lord, he'll hit me with some things, but then I'll take what he has spoken to me over the past several months. And by the time I get to Wednesday, I'll start prayerfully praying through that message. Yeah.
I just asked that because you've never had an issue like you, from me being there. I shouldn't say it like that, but you know I don't know how to say this. You go over a lot, so clearly you're passionate, and clearly you have the message. So I know that's never been an issue. I'm just curious how you come to that. I'm just curious.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't know, like, what am I preaching this week? And that was this week.
Okay.
I just knew, like, okay, we're wrapping up Water the City. I know we're going into a teaching series. So I have what I call standalone messages. I have a lot of messages I've never preached that come out of my devotions that I've journaled. So every once in a while, I'll pull out of my journal, like, what does the Lord show me that I could share with somebody? But yeah.
Have you ever got nervous on stage?
Yes. Oh yeah.
So the way that we like kind of designed this to go is we usually start like where it started, where things like kind of turned a little bit, because sometimes it's for the worse, sometimes it's for the better, and then we kind of like finish up and how things are now. So like, what would you say your story is like right now?
And to be transparent, this is the hardest year of ministry in my life. Has been this year. Well, externally, most people probably wouldn't think that the church is doing well, the church is growing. But here's how I would answer that. It's like, I feel very resilient because of the Lord. And the Lord has given me a spiritual muscle that I've never had before. And those who know me personally, I knew I was going to do a teaching series on suffering. But when I was planning that, I didn't know I was going to go through some suffering. And I'm not really at liberty to really share all of what that is. So people who knew me was attaching the message to the thing. I'm going like, no, that's what the Lord had already given me. I mean, obviously it did, it helped me. But, and that's what I think the American church, I think younger generation, you guys would be in this group, and certainly Generation Z would be here. They want what's real. They give us something real. They don't want, like, which I think is a false gospel, that everything is rosy when you give your life to Jesus. No, it's not. Jesus said you will have trials, like many kinds is what it says. Many, in other words. So I would say right now, I feel resilient, but I had to take plunges to get that. But everybody goes through, you mentioned your addiction. Well, you take some punches to get out of that. But the other side of it is resiliency.
You can't see resiliency until after you have been resilient, though.
Yeah.
So
Right. Yeah, it's like working out. You don't see the success until you're fit.
Yeah.
But when you step into it, when you're out of shape, you're just thinking, I'm out of shape and I can't do this. But every day you show up to the gym. And then one day you're like, I feel healthy, healthier. And same with following Jesus. Like every day I read the Bible and I'm not getting nothing out of it. Like, yeah, you are. You just don't know it. I don't know if you remember this on Sunday. I alluded to this. Like, no, when you stand in the sun, you get vitamin D. And I can't tell you how that's happening, but scientifically, we know that this is a fact. What's true with God's word. I can't tell you how this is speaking to your life, but it is putting spiritual vitamin D into you. So I think, Katie, I feel resilient.
And what's cool about the vitamin D thing is if you don't have vitamin D, you can't absorb any other nutrients.
What?
Yeah,
I
it's like
didn't
a
know.
facilitator. So if you're taking your vitamins, you have to take vitamin D. Otherwise, you're just putting stuff in.
Oh, I wish I'd have known that. That'll preach. I would have said that on Sunday. Like, and here's the other thing: your success, your accomplishments, the things you acquire, it's something. But the nutrients of that doesn't mean anything without the Lord.
No, that message hit me square between the eyes.
Did it?
You know, I'm doing nothing. I'm going nowhere. You know, all this stuff. And it's like from the outside, people are like, dude, from 3 years ago till now, you're a different person. But on the inside, you don't see it. It's how I took that. And, you hit me square between the eyes. But I was like, wake up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have any like personal routines or like a ritual that you do when you're preparing to either write something that you're going to speak on or like actually going up to speak on that? So is there anything like specifically do like psych yourself up or like prepare yourself mentally?
No, there are moments in my office once in a while. Well, I wake up in the morning. I recently have, I've taught on pausing this last week. That's kind of been a newer thing on Sunday mornings before I preach. Even before I always look at my message at home in the morning, very, very early in the morning before I get to church. And then now I just sit with the Lord for 10 minutes. And I always pray in my office and I pray during worship, but sometimes I will pray in the spirit and pray in tongues before I go out. But I do have you talk about my favorite verse. I do have a ritual verse for preaching, and it's Isaiah 50 verse 4. The sovereign Lord has given me a well-instructed tongue to know the word that sustains the weary. I stand on that word when I preach. It's not me. It can't be me. I'm not smart enough. There are people smarter than me. And but if I have the Lord, the Lord does it, then it'll strengthen the weary. That's probably my most prayed verse over my messages. That and Paul tells the Corinthians, I did not come to you with wise and persuasive words, but I came demonstrating the power of the Holy Spirit. Those are my two ritual prayers. Is probably that.
So before we get to our wrap-up questions, I have just two more things I want to ask. Is there anything you wish that we knew more about your role as a pastor?
You mean like people in general would know?
Congregation, the people in general, just anybody, like maybe it's hard on your mental health. Maybe it's,
I think, I don't know if it's something I want people to be aware of, but there are things I know that people aren't aware of. It is an impossible job description. When I think about this, like, okay, so 40 years ago, a country church pastor was like, okay, you make your rounds, you visit people's house, you preach on Sunday, you might lead a Bible study. But now you have to be a motivational speaker. You have to be everybody's counselor. You should always be available. And then we have what they call secondary trauma or compassion fatigue.
Yep, caregiver burnout.
Caregiver burnout. These are all different things. And so you hear in secondary trauma, if you don't know this, what that means is if you share your trauma with me in my office, psychologically, even though I didn't experience it with you, I'm having the same emotional experience you had, but it has the same. So pastors have post-traumatic stress. That's not theirs. It's from the compassion fatigue. And you have to be a leadership guru. You have to be a CEO, because we have a church of over 1,000 people. It's anywhere between 900 to 1,200 any Sunday between the two campuses. And so we have a staff of 15 people. So it really is no other job, I don't think, is like that. So I think, and I'm not saying it because I'm not a victim. So don't hear that wrong. But that's probably something that people aren't aware of. Like, wow, there is a lot of pressure that way, I think. Yeah.
The secondary trauma or whatever that middle thing you said was, the only reason I know I lost my sister to SIDS, but I was too young. So that's what they said that I had, because I watched my mom and dad.
You have, probably survivor's guilt.
Yeah, exactly.
Why did I live and not my sister?
So,
I'm sorry.
So I understand that of
Yeah.
So I guess I didn't realize that's just a job. I mean, there's a lot more to it. So
Yeah.
But that's a lot of your job, is to deal with your trauma all day.
I got a good team around me. I built intentionally, like, we need people to minister. No one person could do that anyway. But that would probably be, I think, firemen, policemen, nurses, surgeons, people that care type counselors.
Yep.
They get that.
100%.
Yeah.
And then it's like your brain just doesn't want to work. So when you say your brain is mush on Monday, I totally understand.
Yeah, you get that.
I have people all day and I'm done. I'm like, shut off.
Exactly.
How do you self-care? What's your selfish care?
Oh, thank you for asking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big proponent of soul care, because what I've learned is no one's going to tell you to take care of your soul. So I am very, I guard my Sabbath, which is Fridays. Fridays is my day off, and I try not to. I don't look at social media. I won't do work things on my phone. I could talk about work, but I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do a thing. I will listen to another pastor's preaching, or not always, but that's my aim. I guess, let me say it, in the best case, when everything works out, that's what I do. Obviously, I'm human, but that's what I do. So I honor the Sabbath. But two things I know as a leader in ministry, you're going to lead out of two things: your Sabbath and your marriage. Those are because if you don't have healthy leadership, you won't have a healthy church. And the health of the church will be determined by the health of its leadership. So, and I teach this to my team, like, we must Sabbath, guys. And Sunday's not our Sabbath, because we have responsibilities. We don't get to take the weekend off if it's nice out. We have to be here. It's a requirement. We're going to care for people. So Sunday's not Sabbath like most people do their Sunday. It's different for us. So mine's Friday, and I Sabbath. But for fun, I enjoy, like, tinkering in my barn. I love playing cards. Like,
Euchre?
Love euchre, probably my favorite card game. That and cribbage.
Yeah.
I love euchre and cribbage. Those just blesses. I feel the most human when I watch a baseball game. Like, go to a park and watch a baseball game for whatever reason. I don't know if it's the rhythm of the game, but I just feel really human. And I listen to 33 records. Again, I mentioned old soul. So, like, I collect old records. I have an old car that I drove here today, a 57 Chevy.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. I work on it more than I drive it, but that tinkering, when you have a sit down job like that, I enjoy that. That's what gives me joy.
Well, I will ask my two wrap up questions, and I'm going to grab this gift while you ask yours.
Okay.
Blah, 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 blah. Is there anything I missed that you would like to share?
I don't think so. Other than just to say thank you for the invitation. It's a privilege. I came today because you are a man after God's heart. And both of you. And like, wow, this guy, he's crawling out of something. He's like doing something with his life. And I know you shared a little bit of difficulties with your job recently, but like, that's just a hiccup, man. You're thinking the right way, and God's going to honor that. That's why I'm here today. That's the one thing I want to say is, how can I be an encouragement to you? Keep doing this. You're going to get better at this. But there's more than this that God has for you. So nothing I wanted to share other than to just say thank you for letting me be in your home. And yeah.
You know, being raised Catholic, and I say that to say this, to have a pastor in my house was a privilege in itself. So no,
Oh.
like really,
I know that about Catholicism. Yeah.
So-
Like you had to preach over. Yeah.
people, and I know that you don't preach this, and people don't even preach it, but I do hold men like you to I hold you guys high because you got, yeah, I just do. So, thank you again,
It's a
really. Thank
personal
you.
preference.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
well, you don't have to talk to a man, talk to God. My grandma distills that in me, but it's
Being of
thank you,
service.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
I don't know how to form what I'm saying, so I'm just gonna leave it at that.
It's just it's a very honoring thing you're
Yeah.
saying. So thank you. I feel that.
Yes, sir. What is your definition of success?
Well, out of the gate would be obeying God. Like obedience is success. But I would say this. Do it even if you might fail. Failing is not. It doesn't mean you weren't successful. You learn from that, right? So if you don't try, you had a quote on your intro that said something like
You
some
missed 100% of the shots you don't
Don't take.
Yep, Wayne Gretzky said that.
Yeah, that's right. You
Yeah.
miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So go up to the plate. Keeps the success is you keep showing up. That's what I would say. Faithfulness is really the key to everything. Teachability is the key to success. The definite here. Can I re-say it? Because now as I'm talking, two things I would say defines your success. Are you teachable? And what I mean by teachable, not just learning new things, but relearning what you think you already know. If you're teachable, you'll be curious, you'll learn things, you'll grow. Faithfulness is success. You keep showing up. What you get out of what you do is not the success. It's the little things that you do consistently that have big impact. It's not the big picture. It's that you keep showing up consistently. It's like saving money. If you keep saving consistently, one day that grows. The success is the consistency, not the gold at the end of the pot.
Sir, Katie, while you ask your question, here's that gift card, and then I will go grab his other gifts.
So if you could pick one word, that's the only stipulation, has to be one word, to describe your entire journey from where you started to where you think you will end up, what would that word be?
Wow, that makes me want to cry. And it's not even a crying word, but music.
Yeah? That's beautiful. Okay, we gotta write that down.
Music. It's just what the Lord has. I'm still passionate about music. I write every week. God speaks to me through songs, and I think He speaks to most people with music.
So this week we did Buffalo Wild Wings, just because I didn't know exactly where you were in Jackson.
Yeah, love it. Thank you.
Buffalo Wild Wings is a casual dining restaurant and sports bar franchise specializing in chicken wings and sports bar snacks. I figured everybody knows that.
Their mission statement is to wow everybody every day, which I didn't know. So,
Okay. Well, I'll go to Buffalo Wild Wings to get wow. Thank
And
you.
then
That's
the
it.
other gift,
What a
I
blessing.
thought it was very ironic. You said something about Elvis Presley. So,
Dude. And I love Harley Davidson's and that specific gas tank logo.
okay.
This is the Lord. Can I ask why you thought of Elvis Presley?
You said something about music one time at church, and I just happened to stumble
But
across
not Elvis.
Not
No.
Elvis. No.
Elvis is,
Well, when I think of music, even though Elvis, I'm not the biggest Elvis fan. When I think of music, I think of Elvis.
yeah,
Mm.
he's the first icon.
Oh yeah, Mark. If you would sign our table,
Absolutely.
And we will sign off. Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Heck yeah.